Hello, good afternoon. My name is Elder Santos and I want to talk to you about integrated planning process and sharing. How easy is it to sharing? Well, I would say that in today's era, in today's modern time, sharing is quite easy. And we all have our greatest friends which share with us in Facebook their collection tie or the beach picture that we never really want to see. But is really sharing that easy? What about when you are in the same place, competing for the same space, is really sharing the thing that humanity does in an easy way? And obviously, I've got a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old and one command TV set. Actually, we've got two, but sharing definitely becomes a difficult thing on a day-to-day basis when you're competing for the same thing. What about when you need to share that physical space, or you need to share time, or you need to give away your next try to do and execute your next action to someone else because you actually believe that your action is the most important one and when it is not? Is sharing that easy at that stage? Now imagine you are managing not one multi-million-dollar project, but the multi-million-dollar project on the mining environment, a $5 billion underground construction and development program that goes on through 5 years before you get any revenue out of that project. Sharing space and sharing time in the correct way at that stage is not important, it's critical for the success of the shareholder value. So how do you align at that time 20 different entities to make sure that at any given moment the decision that is taken by any of these persons is actually the best decision for the best of the project and not for the best of that person? You basically implement integrated planning process to achieve a one plan, proactively manage it, and disciplinarily execute it. So what is IPP really about? Integrated planning process is basically a systematic approach that aligns schedules and priorities throughout different time horizons. What it basically does is it looks at all the constraints throughout your production chain at different horizon times, and it deconflicts those constraints. And it then produces a one plan that can be clearly executed by your workforce. So let me give you an example. Let's say that ventilation and the capacity of ventilation underground is your constraint for the next 4 months. So what IPP will do is look at the activities that are scheduled in that period, and obviously as not everybody can go underground as it becomes a constraint, it basically sequences in the perfect way what activities are more important to be executed at the right time so that you get the proper outcomes of the project during that period, so that you keep your project on time, on cost, on budget. If we will talk about mining like ballet, really IPP is your choreographer. It's the person which is responsible to make sure that that little princess is going to show up at the right place, at the right moment, and bang, do magic. That is the power of IPP. Now let's talk about operational impact of IPP. What does it really mean? We've spoke here about implementing process and not implementing process, and I'm choosing the word implementing rather than installing, okay? So what does IPP really bring in terms of implementation at point of execution? The first one and the most important one for any industry, and especially in mining, clearly safety. We spoke before about the impact of planned work versus unplanned work. The impact that it has first on safety, but also on cost. Clearly what IPP does is it significantly reduces your unplanned work. So it enables your workforce at any given moment in time to be executing around 90 to 95% of their activity without having to ask up, am I doing the right thing? The next impact is that it obviously is then starting bringing predictability to your outcomes. But it also is removing complexity from the point of execution to the planning and schedule component, which actually means it's changing the profile of that frontline supervisor, which now has much more time to focus on properly planning and scheduling his activities. And basically what it does actually do is it allows you to properly comply to your plan and deliver what you need on time, at the right moment, at the right cost. Some of the results we have recently achieved in an underground, or the underground mining project, $5 billion US. We have implemented 23 planning practices that today are used by 1,000 people in terms of integrated planning process and management control systems. So the removal of that complexity actually allows that frontline supervision to stop focusing on management of managing operating systems and managing activities, and designing the proper management control system that allows them to manage the outcomes that they want to see at each one of the levels of your organization, whether it's your frontline supervisor or your area manager or your underground manager or your board. Some of the improvements that we've achieved by implementing that not only on underground construction, but as well on shaft sinking and convey to surface development, 43% improvement on shaft sinking rates, 3 months out of the last 4 with monthly record rates in total advance per month, or 300% development rate improvements on convey to surface development. The most important one, I've actually decided not to write it here. All this was done with 0 harm to people. And that is quite powerful, I would say. So how do you achieve these results which translate into this statement from our client? How do you really implement change to a point that you achieve not only what you have designed as a perfect process or as a perfect management operating system or management control system, but actually you manage people to achieve the result using those tools and those processes? So what we're talking really here, if I pick IPP or integrated planning process, is that what it is doing, it is actually changing the operating culture of that mine. And when you talk about operationalizing culture, you're really talking about creating habits. You're actually talking about designing a framework and then training and coaching people on a day-to-day basis to operate within that framework, to display the right behaviors and the right actions at each and any moment. And that is really about working side by side with people. That means going down 1,200 meters, walking 15 kilometers with a frontline supervisor underground, or sitting with each one of the stakeholders and designing the next schedule or the next plan, or coaching people on how to run actually a root cause analysis or perfect meeting, and using those controls to take actions that will continue improving your planning and your outcomes. At the end, it all comes back to people. Now, is this only applicable to a big mining construction project? The answer is no. I mean, if you're a forestry company, totally integrated forestry company, from forestry nursery to paper mill, and you're trying to look at the cost of your logistic chain and how can you improve that, not on the execution, but actually from nursery, which is 10 years before you're going to transform that piece of wood into a paper sheet. Integrated planning process will add value to that. Or whether you're talking about improving productivity at a sugarcane plantation, which will produce ethanol, or whether you're talking about developing an operating framework which allows your mining operation to scale up and down according to the market conditions and the price of the commodity, being totally flexible and mining at the right moment, at the right cost, the right product that you want to sell. That's what integrated planning process does. So why is it worth implementing integrated planning process? Well, let's just imagine here that you definitely managed to implement that perfect planning process which looks at all those constraints and deconflicts all those constraints. Let's just imagine that you're then able to execute that plan in a disciplined and safe way, and that you've got the perfect tools to actually manage the outcomes of that plan. Let's just imagine that you're doing this by transforming the people which need to do this and actually enabling them to be the change platform for the future for that organization. Let's just imagine that what you plan for is what you're going to get at the end of the day. With IPP, you can plan for that. With management control system, you can control for that. With Proudfoot, you can achieve all of that.